I now want to introduce Pamela Shand. How to get hired is what she's talking about. And again, we know that a lot of people have lost their jobs. There's probably more job shedding that's going to go on before we make it to the end of this pandemic. But it's an opportunity to retool, reskill, and reposition yourself for the positions that are open. And there are going to be new jobs out there as well. So I think there's hope, but maybe there's some things that you can take advantage of that you're hearing today that will help you out in that job market. So now, without further ado, let me introduce Pamela Shand of Offer Stage Consulting.
Thank you so much, Garrett. I appreciate the warm introduction and the warm welcome. Hello, everyone. I know that the presentation has been up and some have seen it in advance, but what I'm going to do to make sure that we're all starting off on the same page, I'm going to share my screen and allow us all to go through the presentation together in the time that we have. And if there are any questions, please feel free to jump in with those. So as Garrett mentioned, we're going to talk today about, just going to go through this, how to get hired. And the purpose of this particular workshop is really to share real solutions, tools that will help you to truly succeed in your job search. One of the biggest hurdles is absolutely the resume. So we're going to focus heavily on how to craft a resume that's really going to get you beyond a lot of those initial barriers, right? One of those barriers being the applicant tracking system. So you want your resume to speak to not only that system, but also the human being, the recruiter or the hiring manager who's going to read it after it gets beyond there. And you want to make sure that you're catering to both audiences because that's how you're going to be successful and get to the interview so you can get hired. Okay. So as Garrett mentioned, yes, my name is Pamela Shand. I'm the founder of Offer Stage Consulting, and I come from the world of recruitment, the world of HR recruitment, and it's always been my job to identify the right talent for the roles that my company had open at the time. And so after years of really helping candidates understand what their resumes need to look like, what these companies and the hiring managers are really looking for, I decided to go out on my own and start to help people even outside of whatever company I was with resumes and LinkedIn profiles, career coaching, and providing whatever other resources that one may need. So one thing that we're going to talk about is what's happening right now. And a couple of these things we talked about earlier, right? So increased unemployment, more is expected, increased job loss is expected. We're seeing a lot of people who now more than ever are applying to a lot of jobs, a lot of hundreds of jobs for a lot of people, and they're not getting the response that maybe they would have gotten once upon a time, perhaps pre-COVID, right? We're seeing jobs that are being placed on hold, meaning that the job was once opened and maybe that organization is now seeing that we don't have the resources to continue and actually bringing this person on board. And so that job is placed on hold, which can be really disappointing, especially if you've already started to interview, right? Another thing that we're seeing are start dates getting pushed out. So you are really successful in your interview, you receive an offer, but you're told you can't start for a few months, early 2021. And now you're thinking, well, what do I do in that time? There's frustration with trying to align your skills to the job, understanding what do employers need right now? How do I even understand what this job ad or job description is saying to me? You're looking through all the different parts of the job description and trying to figure out how do I show them on paper that I'm the person they need to meet with. And what ends up happening at the end of all of this is, and this is natural, that as a candidate, as a job seeker, you start to question yourself as opposed to questioning the hiring process. The initial reaction a lot of times is, well, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? Am I, my skill sets not no longer desirable? As opposed to saying, well, the hiring process may be broken. How can I navigate through that in a better way? So we're going to talk about that. And here's some of the things that we're going to talk about to specifically address that feeling of applying and not getting anywhere. People say the black hole. My resume goes into a black hole. It doesn't get me anywhere. And appealing to what employers need. First thing we're going to look at is research. And I intentionally included this because a lot of times there's advice that tells job seekers what they should be doing, but there's not a lot to help you to understand how to do it. And so it can feel as though you're being talked at as opposed to being talked to. So you're being told to research, but what does that mean? How do you research a job? How do you even know where to look, what to look for? What information should you be holding on to, and what can you not hold on to so much? There are a lot of free tools, online tools. You don't have to download anything, free tools that you can access right now that can help you to do much better in your job search and help you with your research. And we're going to talk about how to use that intel to your benefit. It's not enough to just have the information. For you to be successful, you have to understand how to use it. So we're going to talk about that as well. How to target the job. This is another popular term. Targeting the job. What does that mean? Identifying important, keywords. That's always, right now with applicant tracking systems being so popular with companies of all sizes, um, the ability to understand and identify what these key terms are is going to be great in helping you get beyond that barrier, that applicant tracking system, AI, that barrier, and getting to an actual person who you can then market your skills to. You want to learn how to market not just your technical skills, but also your soft skills, your personality traits, your innate abilities that will show that you are a culture fit and not just a skills fit. Because for a lot of companies, the skills fit, it's easy for them to find a lot of educated, experienced, and talented people. But the culture fit is where things get really tricky for employers. And so that's where they put a lot of their attention. So you want to be able to show that you have those soft skills, those transferable skills too. There are certain skills that transfer from one industry to another. So, for example, if you worked in hospitality and your industry is suffering, well, you can take a lot of those skills and use them in an industry like retail. Right? A lot of retail chains are hiring right now. So you can take those skills and they can transfer over. We want to talk about meaningful versus measurable. Realistically, while you want to be able to show measurable results, and that's always the first priority because that is something that communicates value to the reader, there are some things that may not be measurable. And so you want to still show value. So if you're unable to show something that's measurable, you want it to at least be meaningful, at least show that you had a positive impact on the organization. And then last but not least, we are going to address how to go beyond the application. You don't want to just stop at submitting an application and then sort of walking away and not being able to network or follow up. Use your network, use LinkedIn. We're going to talk about that. And also being able to build your confidence when it comes to the interview and also in negotiations. Your ability to manage each of these steps in a confident manner is going to get you much further. And so being prepared, knowing how to apply these steps is definitely going to help to boost your confidence. So that way you feel like, well, I know what I'm doing. I know that I really just have to work this imperfect process and it's not me. I just have to work the process and I have to just keep going and not give up. Okay. So this is really, really important piece. Research before you apply. And I stress before because what you don't want to do is just be so jazzed about seeing an opportunity that you go ahead and apply and you have not done your research beforehand. And a lot of you probably experience this. I know myself being, someone who's searched for jobs. I know what this can feel like when you are going through a pretty lengthy application process. And some applications can take 20 to 30 minutes. Some take even longer if they have very, very long assessments attached to them. Some may ask you to upload your resume and maybe a cover letter. And then on top of that, you are also manually entering information. And then you've got pre-qualifying questions and other things. So one single application can take a considerable amount of time. And so before you invest so much of your time into an application, even if it looks great on the surface, take a few minutes and research the opportunity. Gather the information necessary you need to create your application strategy, right? Use the information that you find to fine tune your resume and your cover letter so it caters to the opportunity, especially if you're coming from outside of that industry, which a lot of people during COVID are doing. And you also want to research because you want to make sure that you're applying to jobs that are truly going to be a fit for you. Remember, a lot of times, rejection, it feels as if you are personally being rejected, but in actuality, that probably may not have been the right move for you. So you want to make sure that you are applying to jobs that are truly going to be a fit, not just in terms of compensation or there seems to be a match of years of experience or kind of experience, but what about their culture? What if you're doing your research and you find that that company, I don't know, routinely gives to a cause that doesn't sit right with you, or that company has, some things in the news that just kind of rub you the wrong way, or there are parts of their culture that you find out that just don't, align with your values. So there's a lot to consider before you even submit an application. We're going to talk about that. I want to look at three buckets of research. So the first is what I'll call general information. These are things that you can easily find. These are categories of research that most of us do naturally. When you're looking at a job, it's natural that your eyes immediately go to the job description and you're looking at the job requirements. As a recruiter, one of the things that we will talk about is how do we create a job description or a job ad that motivates the candidate to read the entire thing? How do we make the language attractive? Because we knew that a lot of candidates were really just reading, immediately going down to the requirements, and they would say, "Well, this job wants 10 years of experience. Check. This job requires me to have a master's degree. Check. This job requires me to be in a certain, the job is based in a certain town. Well, I live 15 minutes away. Great commute. Check. And oh, by the way, this job pays, I don't know, six figures. I make six figures. I'm comfortable making six figures. Check. Benefits, seem to be okay. They seem to offer health benefits, retirement. Okay. They offer PTO. Okay. They've got some good perks. Oh, I know this brand. I've heard about them in the news. Okay, great. Check, check, check. And they submit an application. But there's more to it than these things, right? And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what else you can look for that will help you to, number one, decide whether or not this is a job you want to apply to. And number two, if it is, get some information that's going to help you to beef up your resume and your cover letter. So when you're applying to this particular role, you know it's going to be a stronger fit had you not done this research than had you not done the research. Culture. This is really, really important, and we talked about it a second ago. Culture is everything. Um, Culture is so important to organizations because culture, believe it or not, culture is what helps you to be happy at work. Culture is what leads to retention. A lot of folks really staying with a company and growing with the company because they just don't want to leave the organization. They're just really, really tied to how they feel coming to work every day, even virtually, logging into work, being with their team. Culture is values. It's being tied to a company's mission and their vision. It's even feeling a connection to the community involvement that a company might do. So for example, if you are really passionate about I don't know, let's say working with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I'm going to use that because I worked with them in the past. If you are, researching a company and you see that, oh, they regularly donate to the Make-A-Wish Foundation and they've been a part of certain projects with Make-A-Wish in the past. I like that. Something like that might tie you to a company. It's more than just they're paying you a great salary because truthfully, you can always find a larger salary somewhere else. You can always find a company that has a better commute, a more convenient commute. You can always find a higher job position, a job that has requirements that are more appealing. But culture is harder to come by. And so this is something that employers really put a lot of time into, hiring for culture fit. And you'll hear a lot of hiring managers, a lot of people who are hiring say, this candidate was really good, they were really smart, but I just don't see them being a culture fit. I just don't see them being a fit for the organization. And when that happens, as a recruiter, we know once we hear that they're not a culture fit, that's one of those things that it's really hard to negotiate on. You can negotiate on years of experience. If the job requires 7 and they've got 5, we can negotiate on that. When it comes to a culture fit, that has to be a match. So look for a company that's going to be a culture fit. Look at their social media. Look at their website. Look at their LinkedIn company page if they have one. They should have one. Most companies nowadays do. And look at their core values. Look at their company mission. Look at the vision. Is there anything that stands out to you? Take a look at the community involvement that they do. Maybe you're really passionate about volunteering and a company that gives back, that might be really attractive to you. So go beyond the general info and look to culture because that makes a huge difference in whether or not someone is hired for a job or a hiring manager says, "Oh, they were really smart, they have a great education, great background, but just not a fit," right? So culture is another huge one to think about. And then this one is really interesting. Insider information, best way to describe this kind of info that you get from these resources. And I have them here. Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, all of these provide what I'll call insider information. They allow you to kind of go beyond the veil a little bit and understand what's really happening within these organizations or what's really happening in the interview process too. You can go on Glassdoor, you can go on Indeed, and you can research and find out, how many rounds do people typically go through? What kind of questions are they asking? Are the questions behavioral based, situation based? And you can find out, what are their employer ratings? Out of 5 stars, are they like a 4.9 or are they like a 2.3? And then you're seeing really low scores on things like, I don't know, culture or the way that they're, treating their employees. And you kind of get some insight into what it's really like, kind of a day in the life, what it's really like to work for that organization. So, for example, you might come across a job ad. Let's kind of pull in all three here. You may come across a job ad where the requirements seem to be on target. Salary looks good. If we were still commuting, a lot of us to offices, the commute would be desirable and all of these wonderful things. The culture, based on what they're putting out there to the public, seems to be spot on as well. But then you go into like an Indeed, and they've got a 2-star rating, and you're finding out that a lot of the employees, especially in the office that you may be working in, or in the location that you're targeting, are really unhappy, and you're seeing a lot of common threads. So that gives you some insight into, what your experience could be like, and whether or not it really is going to make sense for you to really apply to that job. Are you really going to be happy long term, or are you going to take the job today and then in 6 months, be kind of right back out into the job market, right? And with all the work that it takes, especially now, to get hired, you want to make sure that you're doing it right. Okay. And if you guys have any questions as I'm going through, please feel free. Now we're going to talk about how to put your research to good use. Okay, you've done the research, you looked at general information, you've looked at the culture, you've looked at that insider information, those employer ratings. Now, what do you do with that information? What good is it if you don't know how to use it, right? Keywords. Keywords are important still. As long as we are using systems like applicant tracking systems, and there are so many of them, and they're now being used by companies of all sizes. There was once a time when, there's some companies who didn't really use them, but now they're being used by companies that are large, mid-sized, small, because it literally just creates a more efficient process for the employer. But for the job seeker, it can feel like it creates another hoop to jump through, because now you have to make sure that you have these keywords, these key terms. So that way, the applicant tracking system will scan your resume and your cover letter, see the words that specifically speak to the job that came from the job description, usually, and then decide that you are someone that the recruiter or the hiring manager needs to talk to. And I provided a free resource here, JobScan. It's a popular resource. It's one that a lot of not only recruiters, but also resume writers, career coaches, a lot of them use this tool because it's user friendly, it's super easy. And if you are a job seeker and there's a job that you're interested in and you're just not really sure how strong your current resume is against that job, or you need to identify some strong keywords that you can use, um, go to JobScan's website and you can just kind of copy and paste the job description and your resume and see how you stack up, and also get an understanding of um, what words you need to possibly have in your resume or job description. And I have a note here. When you're looking at the keywords, it's not just enough to have like a list of go-to keywords, but take note of how they are phrased or spelled. There are some words where there's more than one correct way to note them. And so take notice to how that employer has it in the job description, because that's what this robot, this applicant tracking system, is going to be looking out for. Okay. Now, after you've gotten your list of skills, ask yourself, number one, do I have these skills? That's a yes or no, right? You go through certain jobs and you think, well, I have these skills, but I don't have those. But I've got most of the skills. I'm going to go ahead and apply, and that's fine. But that's a yes or no question. Do you have these skills or not? Do you have reporting experience or not? Or don't you? Do you have Excel experience or don't you? Next is, how have I used them? Here's where you kind of start to go into the details. It's not enough to just have on your resume, oh, I have this experience, but add some detail. How did you use that experience? And then what was the positive result? Here's where we get into what we talked about a second ago about measurable results or meaningful results. What was the positive result of me using that skill? How did I add value? So do I have these skills? How have I used them? How did I add value by using them? And once you start to answer these three questions with all of these skills that you've gotten, here's where you start to craft. We're going to talk about this in a future slide. Here's where you start to craft those individual bullet points that go under your job experience. And this is how you start to really build out the content of your resume. And that's the most important part of your resume, because that's what gets scanned by an applicant tracking system. That's what's being evaluated by a recruiter or a hiring manager. While yes, there's a lot of visually appealing resumes out there, a lot of visually appealing templates that are out there. Remember, the most important thing is your content, because that is how you are communicating your value. Okay, and then we're going to use our answers to create our targeted resume. This is how you target the job you're after. This is how you get it done. So I gave you guys an example, Jane Doe. I want to put everything that we just talked about in terms of research and keywords and asking those 3 questions, put that into some real practice so you understand how to apply this to even your resume, right? So we're going to review, sorry, a real job description. We're going to pull out some keywords, go through those 3 questions, create the bullet points. Okay, here you'll see a pretty bad looking resume. Not enough detail. The format is just it's not a good format. You'll see an objective statement, which I always say don't use because they don't do you any justice. They pigeonhole you. They don't add value to your resume. Jane even has references available upon request, which we don't use because obviously you're an experienced professional. Of course, you have references, right? So let's just meet Jane. She's an ambitious finance manager, ready for her next step. Good. So, and when you see this, pay attention to everything that we're saying here. It's not just that she's a finance manager; she's ambitious. So she may not even be targeting a manager level role because she's looking for the next step up. She's got 2 degrees, so very well educated. She has experience with reporting, as most finance professionals do. She's detailed. She's highly organized. Okay, she's tech savvy. She is balancing work and family. So think about that. Someone who's balancing work and family, when they're doing their research, they're probably going to look for a company that might even have pictures of, bring your child to work day, or the company might talk about having a good amount of PTO. They might talk about work flexibility. These are things that would appeal to someone like Jane. Okay. Jane describes herself as one of the older millennials. This is something that I've heard quite a bit when networking. I've even described myself this way, one of the older millennials. We kind of came into the job market as this term was just becoming popular. So it's interesting, and our values tend to be part, expected millennial values where you don't feel appreciated in a company. You're more open to kind of looking outside. We may not stay with one organization for 20 years like our parents did, but at the same time, we have some of those other values where if we are really happy with an organization, we're willing to, stay. Targeting a 6-figure role, that's really important, and likes to work in a team environment. So someone like Jane, she probably would love to come into an office, but she's also that person that because she enjoys a team environment, even if, we're in the midst of COVID and she's on a WebEx, she's going to be that one that always has her video on, always, just ready to engage, in any way that she can because this is just her personality. Okay, so if you look here, you're getting a sense of who she is, not just what she's done, but who she is as a person. And it's important that we acknowledge all of these things. And when you're, in your job hunt, acknowledge all of who you are as well. Don't just think about, a match in terms of education or experience, but think about what's important to you as a person. Think about your values and put all of that into play when you're looking for your next opportunity. Okay. Now, here's a job that is perfect for her. It's a director level role. Remember, she wants her next step. And this is a role that grabs some of the keywords, and you'll see we're looking at, someone with either finance, accounting, e-commerce experience, specific types of reporting. So dashboards, SKU reports, sales revenue reports, cash flow. Again, remember, we talked about with keywords, it's not just enough to pull the keyword out of the job description. It's also about looking at how it's spelled. Here, cash flow has a hyphen in between cash and flow. And so that's how some applicant tracking systems may read it. And there are some that if you just have cash flow without the hyphen, it sounds silly, I know, but believe you me, this is important. It might scan your resume and say, well, this person is missing cash flow. So take notice that how it's spelled. Again, the process is not perfect, but this is about you understanding how to navigate an imperfect process perfectly. Okay. They're looking for accounts payable experience, global macro events experience, Microsoft Excel. And then going down, we're getting into soft skills, right? Innate abilities. Remember, it's not just about technical fit, but also culture fit. So, in addition to all of the finance and reporting experience, they're looking for someone who's highly organized, right? Jane is organized. Good, strong communication skills. Someone who thrives in fast-paced environments, and someone who even has a level of supervisory experience. Now, in some job descriptions, this may show up as team leadership, staff management, people leadership. Here, it's supervisory experience. So, if you're seeing that, if you're going through a job description and you're seeing that you've got um, a term or a word that is a synonym of something you already have in your resume, just exchange one term for another, right? It doesn't take away the value, doesn't take away anything from you. It's just making sure that you're able to speak this company's language. That's it. Okay. Now, let's kind of follow the three steps, right? First, does Jane have these skills? Yes, she has finance, accounting, e-commerce experience. She has reporting experience. She's a match on education. She has experience managing people. She's detailed, highly organized, she's analytical. She thrives in fast-paced environments. So this is the yes or no question. Do I have these skills? Does she have these skills? The answer is yes. She's got a lot of those skills. Okay. So this is great. And this is actually the hardest question to answer, believe it or not. It's, do I have these skills? Because once you have the skills, then it's just, well, how have I used them? Right? And we're not looking for any measurements just yet. It's literally just, well, what did you do? So if you have, let's see, if you have experience with reporting, how did she use them? Well, Jane created dashboards. She created SKU reports, cash flow reports, cost revenue reports. Those are exactly the kind of reports that this company wants. So she is looking like she's shaping up to be, this stellar candidate for this role. She's managed a team of 5 people who happen to fit into the facility, HR, and research functions. She supported sales strategies that drove e-commerce growth year over year. This is how she's applied these skills. This is how she's used them. She demonstrated her ability to be detailed, which identified mistakes in their business cycle, and she fixed them. That's it. And there are a lot of people who would use some of these bullet points in their resume. And this is great because you have detail, but we're going to take it a step further and add some measurable results where we can, because again, that is what communicates your value. So having the skills match, having these key terms and keywords show up is what gets you past the applicant tracking system. But once you have a human being reading your resume, they're going to want to see certain terms, and they're going to want to see measurable results. And here's where we do that. Here we have positive results. Here's where we complete the story. We show how we used each skill and the results. This is where we complete the thought. Yes, we have the skills. Here's how we use them. Here was the positive result. And we're going to talk about interviewing in a bit, but this is actually going to come up again in the interview step. Because if you think about some of the popular ways of structuring an interview response, or a response to an interview question, this is what you do. You're talking about what the situation was like, the action you took, and the result. So having this together will help you even in the interview. Okay, so as a reminder, we see Jane's old resume, right? Not a lot of detail, antiquated format with the objective statement and the references available upon request. Not much to look at, not much that would get a reader's attention. So we fixed it. Okay. What we did, you'll see that we added measurable results, and we added them in a way that grabbed someone's attention. Hard to miss that. We also made her core competencies stand out. These were some of the items that, based on the job description, these are some of those keywords that jumped out and that were really important. These are some of those terms that we know an applicant tracking system is going to scan for. So, thinking strategically, we have them right here, front and center, where you can't miss them. Okay. And we have her technical skills showing up, and we've made sure that her LinkedIn profile is hyperlinked so you can easily see it. And we make sure that it's a really clean and crisp and easy to read format. Okay. And she even has a title there, finance director. So someone knows, hey, she may have been a manager before, but she's ready for a director role, and this is what she's targeting. Okay. So let's kind of put it all together. Prior to even submitting an application, do your research. Tackle those 3 key areas. Make sure that this is what you need. Get the information you need. And by doing your research effectively, you tackle not just, you don't just get a good application strategy, but you also are able to prepare yourself for negotiation. Because, and I'm going to share with you some free tools at the end, you also now have a good idea as to whether or not that company pays its people fairly. You know, how do they rate with compensation and benefits? That's a rating on Indeed and Glassdoor. You can look at that. So be prepared for that step as well. Use the free resources that are at your disposal. JobScan is just one of them. It's just one, but there are others, and they're free, and there's nothing that you have to download. You can just go online and upload your resume and get a quick report and kind of get yourself ahead of the crowd there. Identify those keywords or key terms that are going to be used. Take special note as to how they're spelled, how they're given to you. Ask yourself those 3 key questions. Do I have these skills? How have I used them? What was the result? Use your answers to create your resume, your cover letter, and make sure that they speak to you when they're targeting the job. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to go beyond the application. Once you've done all of this, and this is, I call this the heavy lifting part of it, now you're going to go beyond the application. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, I mean, it's over 600, I think, million users, 200 countries. I mean, and the numbers are just growing, especially now during COVID, where people don't have the luxury of, seeing one another face to face. And so use LinkedIn to your benefit. If you don't have a profile, I strongly recommend that you get a profile, complete it. And LinkedIn also has a wonderful way of letting you know whether or not you've got what they call all-star status, which means that your profile is complete. You've gone through all the sections. Make sure that you add your skills, you add a summary, a headline, a professional photo, complete your profile, because your LinkedIn profile is searchable, not just through LinkedIn. It is searchable through Google. Someone can look you up on Google and find your LinkedIn profile and find, the skills that you have. I know a lot of recruiters, recruiters who are looking for highly specialized roles. They use Google as a search engine for talent. And if you have a LinkedIn profile, you will show up. So just by creating a profile, you haven't even done anything else. Just by having a completed profile, you immediately become searchable. Having those open to work features showing up on your profile, immediately you become searchable by recruiters who are looking for talent. Okay, people are still looking for talent, and so you want to make sure that you have everything filled out, all of your experience, all of that, because it's something that we can search for. Now, when you're looking at jobs in particular, you can use LinkedIn to connect with hiring managers and recruiters, and I would recommend connecting with recruiters from both sides of the process. Connect with corporate recruiters and also connect with agency recruiters or headhunters, because that way you'll have access to a lot more opportunity. LinkedIn allows you to start to establish a relationship with the hiring manager. So if you apply to a job, and sometimes you might be able to see, if you scroll down in that very same job ad, you can see either the profile of the poster of the job, which would either be the hiring manager or the recruiter or someone on their HR team. who could help you get your foot in the door. You would either see someone who's in your network if you're on LinkedIn already. You might see someone who's in your network who works for that company. You can ask for an introduction. You might see someone who maybe even went to maybe your alma mater who's there. So you have a lot of opportunity there to connect with someone directly and say, hey, I'm really interested in this director level role. I submitted an application, but I also want to just reach out to you and express my interest. And that's a great way for you to get maybe even an informational interview. There are some companies that, even if they're not actively hiring, they're still doing what's called pipeline building, meaning that they're still building relationships with candidates, even if they don't have a job open, because once 2021 hits, they're preparing for, headcount, they're preparing to add new jobs, and they want to get ahead of the curve as much as possible. So if they already know someone, who they've met, who they've already spoken to, who's great, they're going to think of you when that job opens. So use LinkedIn to kind of go beyond just submitting an application and actually start to build relationships, connect with decision makers, and be someone who's top of mind. Okay. There are some people who use LinkedIn even, and they haven't applied. And then the application becomes more of a formality. And you can kind of relieve a lot of that pressure because you already showed them that, hey, I'm a good culture fit. Okay. And here I have two screenshots that kind of will help you with connecting. There are some profiles, well, most of them you'll see that blue connect button. And if you don't see the blue connect button, you can click on the more options and you'll see a way to connect with the individual there. I would absolutely recommend sending personalized, LinkedIn connection requests. Do that as much as you possibly can, making sure that they're not taking you as maybe just a spam request, but that you're someone who's serious and you're somebody they need to really connect with and pay attention to. Okay. Here we're going to talk about interviewing and negotiations. So once you've gotten past the application, you've probably networked your way in as well. You've gotten your foot in the door. You have an interview on the calendar. First thing I want you to remember is that by the time you get invited to do an interview, they already think you can do the job. Hard parts, for the most part, hard parts over. So I share this with clients all the time. Whenever I have an interview coaching client or even a resume or career coaching client, when we get to the interview discussion, first thing I always say is, listen, by the time you get an interview, we already think you can do the job. If we did not think you could do the job, we would not be interviewing you, right? The interview is our opportunity to maybe get some additional detail and really just evaluate for culture fit and for your thinking style. We want to hear how you kind of work through challenges and how you think about things and see if there's some alignment there. And we'll see if there's a cultural fit. We already think you can do the job. We've seen your resume. We know you have the years of experience and the education, and we see what company you've worked with in the past. We've seen all of that. We already think you can do the job. We have high hopes for you. We want you to do well. Okay. So knowing this, I think takes away some of that pressure. It's not about proving to us that you can do the job. We already believe you can. It's about showing us who you are and hoping that we have that match. Okay. The keywords show up in the interview. A second ago, I told you that those 3 key questions are going to help you in the interview. They are. Those keywords, they help to shape a lot of the questions that are asked and are part of the employer's interview strategy. So they do show up. So make sure that you're using that 3-step process to even build out your interview strategy as to what situation and what examples you're going to give the interviewer, what kind of action you're going to explain in terms of the tactical piece, but also your thought leadership, and then of course the positive result. Be ready to communicate that. This is really important. The interview works both ways. Just as they're interviewing you, you are also interviewing them. Because remember, and I've said this from the very beginning, you have to make sure that that opportunity is right for you. So make sure that you have your interview questions ready for the employer. Ask them about how they would describe the culture. What's their experience been like? How is success measured in this role? Because you want to understand what uh, the scale looks like, and how where you expected to add value and how quickly, right? Interview works both ways. So be ready to kind of evaluate and interview them as well, and pay close attention to even how you're treated in the interview process. Because if you are, as employers, we do this too. If you are seeing any red flags, maybe you are not spoken to in a respectful manner, maybe you're not treated in a respectful manner, well, that gives you insight into what working there might be like. It gives you another level of insider information, right? So pay attention to those verbal and nonverbal cues. Be prepared. Have your questions ready. One thing I have had clients do, if they're um, if they're going to interview at a physical location, pre-COVID, of course, and they've never been to that town before, have no idea how to get there. If it's a town that, according to, I don't know, your Google app is supposed to be nearby, maybe take a minute, drive there ahead of time and drive back. Get a feel for the commute, see if it really is going to work. Leave early if you have to. If it's a video, WebEx style, VidCruiter style interview, log on ahead of time. Double check your the system requirements, your lighting. Be prepared. Make sure that you're ready for this. Keep your answers concise. One thing that's really important is to understand that interviews have a time limit. You may be scheduled for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. You want to make sure that you're making the best use of that time. And as you're going through those steps to answer an interview question, you want to keep that in mind. Make sure that you're giving the employer what they need in terms of information, but without being so overcome with nerves that now you're beginning to ramble and your answers are no longer concise. And then you've lost them. And you don't want to do that. This is really good. Pause before responding. Sometimes in a conversation, and that's what an interview is. It's a balanced, professional, two-sided dialogue. It's a conversation. Um, Sometimes in a conversation, a person may be taking a breath. It may appear as if they finished their thought, and maybe they haven't. And in an interview, especially because interviews come with a measure of nerves, there's an excitement, nervous energy. And you may be so excited that you hear a pause and you kind of jump in. And if they were not finished, it can give the impression that maybe you cut them off a little bit, which can be a huge turnoff for employers. And sometimes it can also give the impression that the answer is not as thoughtful as it could be. So when you are in that conversation, be really conscious of this. Give them a moment, just kind of take a breath before responding. What it allows is it gives them a moment to kind of complete their thought if they hadn't done so already, and also gives you a moment to breathe. And in that breath, you settle your nerves a little bit. And also gives the impression that you are answering their question from a calm, cool, collected, confident place, as opposed to a nervous and rushed place. And you accomplish all of these things simply by pausing before responding. Okay? Some of those little tricks that makes a world of difference. So here are two tools that I really like. PESA is really good because PESA, it's one of those negotiation tools that allows you to enter in a lot of detail, which is really important. You can enter in your work history, your education, your location, everything, and it will give you in your industry, and it will give you, you know, compensation information that you can rely on. And I find it's great to do research like this because after years in recruitment, you understand that different industries will offer very different compensation structures for essentially the same roles. But it's very different because the industries are very different. So having a tool like this really helps you to understand what you can expect realistically. ADP has an awesome tool, a couple of awesome tools, but one that's really, it's probably the most accurate that I've seen. There are a few, but this is the most accurate. A paycheck calculator. If you are looking at a pay scale that's very, very different than what you're accustomed to, and you want to understand the impact it will have to you in a real way, that calculator will help you. You can enter in things like your state, your 401k, if you expect to, contribute to that. You can enter any additional deductions and really see what your paycheck will look like. And it's pretty spot on. And it works for, if you're working as a consultant, you maybe it's hourly, setup. They have an hourly calculator and they have a salary calculator. And so it's a really good tool. It's probably the best I've seen, and it's super duper helpful. It's really accurate. And that's really important to help you to kind of understand whether or not that role that you're looking at is going to really compensate you at a level that's going to work and helps you with negotiation so you understand where you should be. Okay. All right. So let's kind of go through everything. When it comes to research, we want to look at the general information, which most folks do, but take it a step further, look at culture, look at the insider information, check out their scores, and ask yourself if that's something that you realistically want. Identify the keywords that you need and ask yourself, do I have these skills? How have I used them? And what was the result? Because that's going to help you to create the content for your resume, which is the most important part. That's what gets the most attention. And then you don't want to stop at just the application, right? You want to take it a step further. You want to network where you can, and you want to make sure that you are working it in the interview as well as in your negotiating. Okay. This is the end of the whole presentation. Definitely going to close this down so we can take some questions, but here's how you can stay in touch with me. I'm on the major platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, pretty active there. Also, theofferstage.com is where you can learn more about what we do as an organization and what kind of services and tools that we offer, like our toolkit here. Okay. Awesome.
Well, Pamela, thank you so much. This has been a great segment. I'm not sure, there's a few questions here in the chat, and if you haven't covered them, we also, I understand you can move over to our Zoom lounge room, and we're going to have some networking sessions, and so people can connect with you there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I got a lot of questions in advance. A lot of people, a few of them kind of watched the presentation. And oh, here we go. I see something from WOBA. Yeah, I got a lot of questions on WOBA. How do you know when a company or corporate culture is not a good fit? That's a really good one. So the answer to that question, I'm not sure who that came from exactly, but the answer really depends on you, right? It all starts with you. And I think that's a kind of like an aha moment for a lot of people because they believe that it all starts with the employer. They believe that the employer has all the power and it's whatever they want and how do I become what they want. It's not about that. Hiring is like dating. You are who you are, they are who they are, and either we match or we don't, right? So if you have to first of all know who you are, where your values are, and what's going to work for you, and then you look at what the company is or who the company is. And if you're looking at you're looking at their vision, their mission, their core values. If you're checking out the kind of content they're posting, even on social media, you see what they care about. Then if that rubs you the wrong way, then they're probably not a good culture fit for you. Also, if you're interviewing and you don't like the way you're being treated in the interview, I've been there. I know what it's like to be in an interview and someone cuts you off or says, or kind of makes like snarky comments, and you're thinking, am I in a professional setting? So if you find yourself in a situation where you're not even being treated properly in the interview, then right there, not a good culture fit because this is probably how they speak to one another. And maybe they like it. I don't. So I don't think this is a good culture fit for me. It's all in how they make you feel. If you feel at home and you feel like this is great, they're probably going to be a good culture fit. If you're honest with yourself and something really doesn't feel right, not a good culture fit. I'm seeing some other things. I'm going to just, am I able to do this? Yes, I am. Okay.
Maybe we'll wrap up with one last question, and I think I see
Okay,
one
so
more on there.
someone says, because of applicant tracking systems, are you saying that if you're not a perfect fit for a job, meaning that you're covering all of the job description bullets, you should not apply? What do you think? That's a great question. And this is why I love using tools like JobScan, because what JobScan does is it actually separates what they call the high value keywords from the low value keywords. High value meaning these are the keywords you need to have. Low value meaning if you don't have these, but you're a strong culture fit, they may still take a risk, an intelligent risk, and hire you. And a lot of companies have been open to do that. So even if you, I would recommend that if you feel, and again, being honest with yourself, if you feel that you are a match for 80% of the job description, no less than 80%, then you can apply. And especially if you have those high value keywords, you can apply. Okay.
Great.
Let's see. Thanks for the higher level corporate jobs. You said, oh, you're welcome. And then someone says, oh, how do we navigate wearing the right outfit for personal branding and for interviews these days? Take Mark Zuckerberg, who wears t-shirts and jeans and then a suit for Congress. I've noticed that too. He's really good at that. And Steve Jobs used to wear, like, his sneakers and his jeans to, the Apple conferences. But that's really good. What makes sense for your personal brand really depends on what you do, right? So if you are, and I always say, even the idea of dressing professionally, that term is relative to what your industry is. A professional look is relative. So, for example, if you are a cosmetologist, you're in the beauty industry, right? For me, when I see you, a professional look for you means that you always have a perfect haircut or perfect, your hair is always perfectly coiffed, or your nails are always perfectly filed and they're all the same length and the color is perfect and perfectly polished and makeup is perfect, because that's your industry, that's your world. If you are, I'm going to go crazy here, a tattoo artist, I would expect that your tattoos are all perfect. It's like artwork on your body, right? But if you are coming from more of a corporate environment, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw a suit, button-up shirt, a tie, you know. And it also depends on, and this is probably it's going to be a whole nother workshop if I continue to talk about this, but it also depends on, the situation. So Mark Zuckerberg, he wears jeans and t-shirts because that's probably the culture of Facebook. Think about Facebook. Facebook is technology. It's trendy. It's still a kind of seen as a kind of a young, hip kind of a platform, right? So you would expect that in that environment, there's going to be a lot of more casual dress, perhaps. But again, when he goes before Congress, he's not going to be in a young, hip environment. He's in front of politicians and people who are going to scrutinize his company and his policies. So I would think he'd put a suit on to be in front of Congress, even just to show respect for the environment that he's in, right? So when it comes to what's the right outfit, part of it is your personal brand and what you do. But another part of it is consider your audience, consider the environment. All right. So hopefully all of that helps.
Pamela, thank you so much. And I encourage anyone who wants to continue talking with Pamela. We have the Zoom room open. The link is in the chat now. And we're going to do some networking in there as well. So feel free to move on over. But this is the end of the Big Connect. So thank you again to Pamela Shand. Thank you to all the great speakers that we had today. Again, our Zoom Lounge networking room is open. Pamela will be over there, presented by Southern Connecticut Gas and UI, their energy efficiency programs. Hey, we do have a winner now for our Foxwoods Resort Casino giveaway. And the winner is, and this was an automatic drawing from everyone who went in to see those booths. The winner is Amy. Let's see, who do we have here? Oh, Amy Pacelli with SphereGen. So Amy, congratulations. And thank you everyone who went to see those exhibitor booths. I know it was something different going to a virtual conference and seeing those exhibitors but a great place to be able to go and see what was happening with all of our participants. And again, I want to thank those exhibitors as well. Let me thank our sponsors. They're up here on your screen. Comcast Business, thank you so much. Thank you to all these sponsors who stuck with us. This is not normal doing a virtual event, let alone 4 days. These sponsors really came through with us and wanted to continue on with this program. So we appreciate them. Again, all of our speakers, all of you for joining in here and being a part of this program. I also do want to just give one more shout out to our Expo committee because they did a great job. The entire chamber staff, you have not seen them, but Tamika and Shantae, they're both behind the scenes here with me. We've been doing this for the last 4 days. Jesse, Ray, Betsy, Glenn, everyone on the chamber team. I know I'm leaving people out right here, but this is really a full effort by the entire Chamber of Commerce team and Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce as well to be able to put on an event like this for you. We have one more big event coming up before the end of the year, and it's our outlook, our 2020 Regional Economic Outlook for 2021. Again, presented by People's United Bank, virtual again. We're going to miss the Lawn Club this year, but December 10th at 8 a.m. till 9:30 a.m. And we're excited to have everyone be a part of that. We're looking forward to hearing from John Trainer and Sean Keating with RSM and get a sense of hopefully some very positive news that we can have for 2021. So again, thank you everyone for making this an incredible 2020 Big Connect presented by Comcast Business. Make sure you make your way over to the Zoom lounge and have a great day. Happy Thanksgiving.